Hey geeks, welcome to this special roundtable interview of The Gambler. Joining us today are director Rupert Wyatt, actors John Goodman and Mark Wahlberg. All the questions in this roundtable were not originally asked by me, but I am reiterating those questions so you guys can hear clearly what was being asked. Hope you enjoy this, and thank you again to the makers of The Gambler, which opens on Christmas Day, 2014. So Rupert, what first interested you in making The Gambler?
Wow. Okay. I made my last film 3 years ago, I think it was now, and I really wanted to do the sequel to it, and then sort of realized in some ways that I didn't want to repeat myself, if you know what I mean. I didn't want to try and I felt like we sort of pulled off this minor miracle and done something that I think we were all proud of. But like anything you're proud of, it's hard and it's challenging. But I wanted to sort of shake it up a little bit and do something very different. And I was actually set on a path of doing my own thing, which I couldn't get off the ground. I couldn't get it made. So I started to read other scripts that were coming in, and a lot of scripts I was reading were very good and had so much kind of potential. And these scripts are all green lit. That's the thing. It's like this is going to happen, and this is the studio, and these are the producers. And as a director, you can easily find yourself in these sort of arranged marriages, I guess. And sometimes that's great, and sometimes that's a challenge because you don't know the people, and you have to live with these people for some time. So I was wanting to change things in these scripts and redevelop them. And when something's greenlit, no one wants to do that. It's quite hard, which is totally understandable. So I sort of thought, okay, I'm not going to waste anyone's time. I'm not going to waste my time. And I'm only going to say yes to something that I kind of read and see it immediately, and it's on the page. And my agents sent me, well, they talked to me about The Gambler, and I was like, I don't want to do a remake. And then I finally read the script, and then I read it, and I realized this is not a remake. This is a reinterpretation of this is taking the title and then doing something very different with it. And I'd always wanted to work with Mark. I've always found him. For me, he's a Spencer Tracy of the modern day. He's a guy who's very. He's got a naturalism. It's like you don't see the duck's feet paddling, and I think there was something really intriguing to me about that. So that combination, and then meeting with him, and and just the opportunity to get back to work and become a better filmmaker. So that was it.
This movie, Rupert. After making Planet of the Apes, were you looking for a less visual effects driven movie?
It's funny because with Apes, it was sort of, even though there was a lot of performance capture, and it's kind of, as a director, you're very lucky. It's like you drive this Ferrari, but you don't really know how the engine works, and if it breaks down, you're screwed. But in the same way that we all work off computers, but how do we really, so you're very reliant upon the technicians with a film like that. And of course, the more you know, the more you can avoid being bamboozled, if you know what I mean. So I did my due diligence on that film. I really learned performance capture. But first and foremost, for me, making Apes was all about performance, especially having that opportunity with the apes, because they didn't speak. It was like mime. It was great, and Andy Serkis and Terry Notary, those guys. So it was a performance movie for me. But yeah, it was a big film, and with a big film comes a lot of responsibility, a lot of obligations. It's kind of like driving an oil tanker. If you want to change direction, you gotta know about it in advance, otherwise it's hard. So I wanted to do something smaller, a bit leaner, a bit more nimble, and really some of my favorite filmmakers like Hal Ashby, Alan Pakula, sort of 70s American cinema, are not necessarily naturally inclined in that way as a filmmaker. My previous two films are much more genre, much more cause and effect storytelling. So I just wanted to try something different, a bit more freewheeling, a bit more focused on characters in situations, and it's a challenge. And for better or for worse, I feel like that was the right choice for me to then become a better filmmaker.
Did you think about combining Mark Wahlberg with Planet of the Apes?
Yeah, I know. I didn't even think about that until midway through the filmmaking, and we started talking about apes, and I was like, holy cow, you were in the last one. That's right.
Rupert, what was the biggest challenge working with Mark Wahlberg?
God, it's going to sound really, really, really sappy, but I'm trying to think of a challenge. There is no. The challenges are obvious, which is getting it right. You know, getting things to a point where they come alive. You know, and Mark came onto this before I did. Mark championed the project. He was the one who essentially got it green lit, and so I came in after. And I think as a director and as a filmmaker, you know, we all have ego and we all want to carve out our own identity and stuff. And so the challenge going in for me was, okay, how do I make this a representation of the film that I want to make? But it really, in working with Mark, it's sort of seamless. There's never, you know, there's good friction, if you know what I mean. There's you know, and obviously from friction comes energy. So you need those kind of moments where you challenge each other and you push each other. But he's somebody who, I don't know if you guys were there last night with his Q&A, yeah, but he really takes pride in his work ethic, and for good reason, because he's extraordinary. I mean, he had 7-page monologues. That lecture scene, he knew like that, and we were shooting that day in, day out for 3 days on the run, like from beginning to end. And it was this really interesting thing, because we did that at the beginning, because that's a lot of dialogue to learn, and not only that, we're blocking out his movement through the audience, and all of those students were obviously extras, and you know, they don't know the movie, they haven't read the script, and so it's my job obviously to educate them and give them some information, but hold other information back, and let them know why they've come to this lecture and all of that. But as far as they're concerned, the vast majority are going, we're here in a Mark Wahlberg movie. And same with the crew, day one. You know, everyone's showing up and they've got their preconceptions of what it is. And it was a wonderful thing. At the end of day 2, when we finished, he did it one more time, and he got the most spontaneous kind of round of applause, because I think everyone was so bowled over by the fact that this guy could literally just rattle it out like that, and just had this amazing... he immersed himself in that role. So challenges were few and far between in that way.
Rupert, tell us about casting Jessica Lange. Did you have her in mind from the get-go, or was she already attached to the film?
Yeah, I mean, and I say this with all sincerity. Every single person in this movie was my first choice, which is not always the case, obviously. Brie, I saw in Short Term 12, Brie Larson. She had a tough job, I would say, because that character, and it's that thing which I find increasingly frustrating in modern cinema, and it needs to change, which is, you know, the female characters can so often just serve the protagonist, which is more often than not male. And I think, you know, and I say this without cynicism, because I'm trying to do the best job I can, but I was so fortunate, because often the case is, if you don't get a good actress in and let's be honest, it's an underwritten role. It's a role that in some ways is so justified in being there more often. But if you don't get a good actress in something like that, you're dead. And with someone like Brie, it just screams like, why is she not in this more? Because she has this amazing ability, without saying anything, to sort of convey the right emotion. And it did. I think you love Jim Bennett, or love might be too strong a word, but you empathize with Jim Bennett all the more because he falls for somebody like that. And it was the same with all my ensemble. When you're making an ensemble piece that are all built around one character, they're all serving that character. And Jessica, I always loved the idea that Jessica's character, the mother, is the antithesis of her son. That's why they have this dysfunctional relationship. And we based it on this socialite who, without mentioning names, was someone who'd grown up was a waitress in Reno, and married into this incredibly wealthy family, and then married another wealthy family guy, and basically worked her way up to this pinnacle of material success. And they all died around her, and she ended up, she's a widow with all of this extraordinary wealth, but in a way a prisoner of her own desires, and in a way that represents everything that Jim wants to escape from. And that's why we shot the mansion that she lives in this kind of, it looks like it's the Playboy mansion actually, where we shot it, but I specifically chose it because I wanted to look heavy and kind of like a noose around her neck kind of thing. So
Rupert, was the end of the film always intended to end that way, or did you have an alternate ending?
no, that was always the ending. I mean, I can't remember whether the script actually played out the idea of running. I don't know whether it did or not. I forget now. I mean, early on we decided that we wanted him to be running to something rather than running from something. And I love the idea of bookending the film. So when he's driving to the gambling house at the beginning, he's in this BMW, and it's this kind of, again, the preconceptions of the movie are playing out. It's going to be this kind of movie. It's a gambling movie. It's Mark Wahlberg in a flashy BMW, and everything in a way that's material and aspirational and our society. And then by the end, he's a guy in a white shirt just running alone through the streets of LA. I thought was a great arc in a way to show that the wealth that he's actually really looking for is more spiritual than material.
Rupert, how did you come to cast Anthony Kelly?
We had a real challenge with that part because obviously we needed to find a guy who was a high school student, but going pro as a basketball player. All of the things that I think if we'd gone a more traditional route of casting, we would have found someone perhaps who was a very experienced actor, but that probably wouldn't be as authentic in that part. And so we set out, Sheila Jaffe, our casting director, set up an open casting call in Compton, and we'd gone to New York and we'd gone to various other places, and we'd had ideas, but we hadn't really found somebody that had it. And I could have gone one of two ways. I could have gone with a very cocky sort of cocksure sort of guy, and there was one guy that we were very close to casting that had that, but there was something about it. When I met Anthony and I saw his tape, and I think he lives close to Compton, and he came in, and there's a sort of innocence about him because he's never acted before, and he's an incredible blank slate, but he has extraordinary intelligence, and he was very sharp and very quick, and he worked incredibly hard on the scenes that he had, but I don't know, I mean, I can't put myself in his shoes, but day one he's doing the I Got a Knee scene with Mark Wahlberg in a Hollywood movie, and he's never done anything like it before, and so all of that pressure, we were lucky because he didn't display any sense of intimidation or anything. So yeah, he's a natural.
Rupert, what was the character's main motivation behind being a gambler? The movie really leaves you guessing.
That to me is what separates this film from the original, which is we wanted to tell the story of a guy who uses gambling as a way to get back to the vacant lot at the end. That shot where he's standing in front of the empty lot, and that's representative of him, which is a guy who has everything. It's kind of crazy. It's like an overdog story about a guy who wants to be an underdog. So it's the opposite of Rocky, and so for a Hollywood studio to make that movie is great. I love, that's why one of the reasons why I did this. So the ending to me is about and in this day and age, it's like we live in such a materialistic society where we all have these hopes and dreams, but they're all built on society's ideas of what is success, and basically money and material objects and things like that. And here's a guy who has all of that doesn't want any of it, and that's a tough thing to sell to a modern audience, because most people want the opposite. They're looking at this guy going, "What's your problem, dude?" He was a guy who wanted to be free, and I think the idea is that he was prepared to risk his life in order to do that. And he says specifically to Bree's character, Amy, in the college hallway, "If I come to your door, then you'll know that I've made it. And if I don't, what you do is you bury the dead." And so he knew he was risking his life in order to get out. But that's why he burns his mother's money at the casino. He doesn't, it's not so much he's an addict that he can't help himself. He knows that the very act of doing that is going to get rid of his family. It's going to push her away. And again, it's like playing against all the tropes of the gambling movie. Our expectations are that he can't help himself, he has to gamble. And you could read it like that, and that's okay. But for me personally, it was much more about okay, he's setting out on a quest. It's sounds glib, but it's Luke Skywalker basically, on his journey, and in a way it's preordained. This is the journey. This is what his grandfather says at the beginning. I need to know what you'll be worth when I leave you nothing, and that's the journey he takes.
How important was it to film in LA?
It's really important. It's vital in many ways, I think, because not only from the point of view of the fact that it's such an extraordinary city to shoot, but you have such a talent pool here, crew-wise, and it's all the invisible stuff that one doesn't think about. But for example, if me as a director, like I'm working with my DP, Greg Fraser in this case, who's an extraordinary director, and he lives here, and a large part of the fact that we got him was it allowed him to stay at home and be here. And we're talking about a scene that we go, okay, well, we want to shoot tomorrow's scene on a Steadicam, and so we got 24 hours to organize that. Now, if you're shooting in a city that's tax friendly but doesn't have a strong talent pool, chances are the very best Steadicam guys are just not available because there's only 2 of them in town. Whereas here, you've got a choice of 5 or 6. And that really does so much for the end result of the movie. And I think it's the stuff like that that's easily forgotten. It's all about number crunching and like, oh, well, if you shoot in Atlanta, it's cheaper. But that's why I think modern movies are all becoming a little homogenized, and they all sort of look the same because everything is sort of being, shot for something else. Whereas for me, this was all about location shooting and a kind of dysfunctional love letter to LA. So,
John, what was it like when you first read the script?
Well, the idea of doing a remake, I wasn't thrilled about it because I liked the first movie so much, and then the script turned me around. And well written, it does like half your job for you as far as remembering lines. At my advanced stage, it's a blessing. Thank you. Are you all internet guys and shit?
Yes, we ain't that shit.
Can you tell?
Huh?
You look really nervous and like
I don't know.
antisocial.
No, I'm nervous and antisocial, pal.
John, how did the script get to you?
Through the mail. Well, my agent. Sheila Jaffe, the casting agent. She's not going to want me to say this, but I've known her since like 1979. She was the manager of a place called the Cafe Central that I used to hang out in New York. And I guess she came up or thought of me, or I don't know how I came about, but they went to my agent. My agent sent me the script.
Mr. Goodman, at this point in your career, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, I'm Batman. I'm Batman. I'm Lex Luthor with the head.
What made you want to do this story?
I'd never really played a guy like this before. Never acted in a towel before, which I don't think I'm going to do again. No, I just never really played a guy like that before. I thought it'd be kind of fun, and I really like the dialogue, and I really admire Wahlberg. I really do. I think the world of him, and I wanted a chance to work with him.
So what was it like to work with Mark Wahlberg?
Nothing. He didn't say anything. He did. It was great. I really liked the kid.
So, Mr. Goodman, what do you think of working with Rupert Wyatt?
He was great. Yeah, he really pulled everything together and had a great vision for the show and a lot of ideas, and it was really fun. It was a lot of good energy, as the hippies used to say.
And whose idea was it for you to be topless?
Wasn't mine.
Do you think you brought sex appeal to the character?
Yes.
Bald in truth. It was.
Yeah, that's what I wanted. Nuts.
Do you see yourself in this character at all?
I had 3 guys killed yesterday. I think after living so long, it's just the idea of what the guy lived for, and this is what you do with your money, and everything else is F you. Maybe that appealed to me.
John, what do you hope the audience will walk away with after watching The Gambler?
I hope they enjoy it. That's all. I never know.
Mr. Goodman, you shaved your head for the movie. Was that your idea, or was that Rupert's idea?
It's Rupert's idea, but the deal is, I did a Broadway show about 5 years ago where I had to be bald. I never looked bald. I always looked like Knucklehead Smith, this ventriloquist dummy with no hair. But it was all stubble coming through. So what they spray painted my head, so I actually looked bald in this one. So that was pretty cool.
Mr. Goodman, what's it like shooting in LA for you?
Yeah, I do have a place here, and I miss shooting in Los Angeles. Yeah.
John, what was your favorite scene in The Gambler to film?
I think the one where I was spelling out the my philosophy of life in the gambling club, whatever kind of club we were in, downtown.
Mr. Goodman, can you tell us who influences you? Whose pictures on the wall you have?
Gene Hackman, Marlon Brando, Al Pacino, Meryl Streep, Kevin Kline. There's so many. Ralph Richardson. Just an endless list.
John, what's the one film you get recognized the most for?
Big Lebowski.
That's what I would say.
Yeah. Which is great because I'm a fan of the movie too.
Any plans for a Big Lebowski 2?
I don't think there's going to be a Big Lebowski too. It'd be fun.
Please. You can make things happen.
Yeah.
You can live wherever you
Yeah,
want. You can take me where all you
I'm
want.
Mr. Hollywood Kingpin.
Well, getting
The dialogue was sharp and on point. Was that you, or was that the way the scene was written?
No, I think the only thing that changed was the grandfather. Mark's grandfather had another scene, or a couple of scenes, and they decided, I guess, to kill him off in the beginning instead. You know, I was only in it for like 4 days, and my stuff was locked in. So I don't know what I can't speak for the rest of the movie.
Mr. Goodman, would you consider another TV series?
Sure, I'm kind of doing one now, and for Amazon.com. It's called Alpha House. We shoot it 10 weeks a year in New York. Gary Trudeau writes it. Jonathan Alter produces it. And it's a lot of fun.
John, what's it like working on Tremble?
It was remarkable watching Brian work, become this character. And then I got to work with Louis C.K., who I'm a huge fan of. Jay Roach directed and directed well. It was just a fun, and I was only on it for a week, which is unfortunate because I would have liked to spend more time with Brian.
Well, what's he like?
How are you as a gambler?
I suck. Last time I gambled, I was still drinking. I got up $3,000 at blackjack, and I felt a pair of arms around me. It was my buddy. Pulled me out of the chair, so it's time to go. So that's the last time I played. I used to, I'd go and then I'd get up and then it was, hey, they give you free liquor here. Boy, are they stupid. And then I give the money back and then some. So I'm not lucky and I'm not good.
So what do you think about the line in the movie, I'm not a gambler? Do you think it was more about the rush?
The way it was set up, with that line, I'm wondering if he was an addict at all, or just incredibly self-instructed. That's what the movie leaves me with, is he was just, because he didn't get along with his mother too much, or is he afraid he's going to turn into her? It's a lot. It gives you a lot to think about. But I'm not sure that he's an addict.
And
He's looking for like a validation in his mind. There is no if you can't be perfect, why bother? That's also that underlines a lot of addiction too. You're always reaching for something better than you have right now that doesn't exist. But in his lectures and everything else, he was talking about, if you can't be the absolute, if you can't be the genius, why bother? Don't show up, which is foolish, but that's the way he was thinking. But in the end, I want to think that he just could walk away from it all. And if he was a true addict, of course, that's foolish. He couldn't. But boy, was she good. She was good. Everybody was good in it.
Do you enjoy watching yourself perform on screen, or are you the kind of person who wants to leave the theater as soon as possible?
I wanted to leave the theater immediately. It was very uncomfortable. Yeah, I wish I could have done it a little better, but there's just some stuff that made me uncomfortable.
John, your monologues just flew off your tongue. Did you improv that, or did you just study to get it down? There was a great rhythm and flow.
It's soaked in more than practicing. It just like it was pretty easy to remember. But I'm really insecure about my brain, so I just keep going over and over and over and over.
John, is there a character that you've always wanted to play that you just can't wait to play?
No, I've never been that ambitious. Really, no. It's just whatever has come down the.
Mr. Goodman, what do you like in a director when you show up on set?
Yeah, I like a lot of rehearsals, but you can't really get them. I just talked to Rupert a couple of times before we started shooting, and that was pretty much it. Yeah, I mean you're expected to know your stuff when you show up, but I like I like a little running start. I like a little rehearsal.
Are there any plans to reunite with Roseanne?
We tried to do something together about 3 or 4 years ago. We did a pilot for NBC that they didn't care for. I talked to her the other day. She had her birthday, and I just swear to God, I thought I saw her driving a red Mercedes convertible on the way over here, and she was like behind me, and I was rolling down the window trying to stick my head out and just lost her. But I don't know if it was her. I don't know if she went back to Hawaii, but yeah, it would have been funny. Hey!
What was the name of that project?
It was called Downwardly Mobile. We were at a trailer park. Yeah, I was she was managing the place and I was the handyman. It was pretty cool. They got a great group of people.
Mr. Goodman, was acting a lifelong calling for you? How did you get into acting?
I did it in high school, or junior high school for the first time. I liked it. I did it in high school a couple times. In college, declared myself a drama major, but I was always interested in it. I didn't know if I could do it as a profession until right before I moved to New York to try. But I did that just because I thought I'd be up there for a couple months and then come back home. But just to prove that, so I wouldn't regret it for the rest of my life not trying.
When did you first realize that you could act? That you had what it took to make it?
I saw a guy in a Broadway show who was a Juilliard guy, and he was stinking up the joint. And I said, Jesus, I could do that. I could stink up the joint as well as anybody. So I just kind of relaxed.
How many auditions did you go on before you got your first call?
Well, it was not a matter of that, but landing the right thing, and that took a while. But my first job was a dinner theater job in Ohio. I moved to New York to get a dinner theater job in Ohio, but that's where they cast from. So, and it was only a few weeks actually.
What do you have coming down the pipe?
I'm finishing up the movie I'm doing now in a couple of weeks, and then I'm off for a while and just waiting here on Alpha House to see whether that gets picked up again. And I just want to take it easy for a while.
With the flack that remakes get sometimes in Hollywood, did you have any apprehension to doing The Gambler?
No, I mean, we did it Planet of the Apes and Charade. The Italian Job, so. No, when I read the script, I've had some fairly bad experiences with the remake, so I was trying to stay away from that world for a little while, but then we had a good experience with the Italian Job. But I read the script, and I'm a huge fan of Monahan. We worked together on The Departed, and he wrote American Desperado for us. I was in his movie that he directed called Mojave, and we have a great rapport, and I just love the material of the part. I talked to Jimmy Kahn, he gave me his blessings. I talked to Topak, and he gave me his blessing, so we just felt like it was kind of cool and different, and we could make it our own while still paying respect due to the original.
Talk a little bit about.
What do you think of the script? Was it powerful? And
yeah, I read it on the plane, and you just start reading the lines out loud, and you realize that it's going to also attract some great talent because they all have these they have an opportunity to come in and play some really juicy parts and do their thing and showcase their abilities in a pretty cool way. So, like John Goodman and Jessica Lange and everybody else was really just, I normally have to go out and court people, and the material really attracted everybody, so it was fairly easy to get everybody on board.
Now, as an audience,
Did you know what you wanted to do with the character from the get-go after reading the script?
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to push the envelope as much as possible. We knew that we weren't making a character that was not going to necessarily be likable, but we wanted to be interesting enough and compelling enough in how brash he was and how unapologetic he was that people would at least find it interesting to see what was going to happen and how it was going to turn out.
Mark, did you feel like your character is a gambler, or does he have...
No, I feel like he just chose gambling as the tool to kind of strip himself of all those things in his life that were basically holding him back from finding out who he really was and what he was really supposed to be doing with his life.
Do you have...
Mark, do you feel like your character is a gambler, or does he have any qualities you like?
I like him anyway, but don't don't judge me by that, because I mean, I always, for me, watching a movie, the best part of a great movie is a great villain, and I usually have a tendency to root for the bad guy. I always tend to like the characters that I play. I'm convinced that I am this person, and I'm okay with whatever they do.
Mark, what was it like growing up in your house?
It was always entertaining. In our world, maybe our idea of entertaining may be different from other people. Gang fights, free-for-alls, those things are part of the everyday routine. But we loved each other and we were supportive of one another. My mom was always a bit of a showman. My dad loved the cinema. So yeah, it was in our blood. It just wasn't. It wasn't something that seemed possible because of our, surroundings and the environment that we were being raised in. That's right. I didn't know. Did I ignore them?
Mark, what have you gotten out of acting that you didn't think you were going to get?
Well, I didn't know what to expect, but I knew that the possibilities were endless. Pretty early on in making the first movie, I realized that this is what I wanted to do. It was one of those things because for whatever reason, I was fighting it. Was because I was being misunderstood, not taken seriously, whatever it was. I felt like by that time I just felt like I found my niche, like this is what I was supposed to be doing. So I completely submerged myself into the world of watching movies, making my own movies, buying video cameras and lights, and when I wasn't making a movie, I was making my own movies. And when I wasn't making movies, I was watching movies. And I was going back and studying film and looking back at guys that were perceived as great, guys that I could identify with. I mean, it just became my life. I had The Godfather 1 and 2 on loop in my hotel, and oh, he's dropped something. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, that just became my life, and I knew the possibilities were endless, and because of my work ethic and my drive and my desire, all those things have kind of helped me to get to where I am today, which is the first day of the rest of my career. And I'm starting now, like I'm just starting out and looking forward to the future and what the future holds.
Mark, how has being from Boston helped you or hurt you?
Being in LA and pursuing an acting career and having a Boston accent was always like it's a bit of a handicap. So I wanted to stay away from that, but then the first time I went and did movies that were required to use that accent, I was having great success. So with The Perfect Storm, and then with Departed and Fighter, so it's nice to be able to tap into that. The great thing that I feel like, also having a lot of real life experience helps me. I feel like I have the upper hand because I have so much real life experience drawing, as opposed to techniques and things that you learn in classes that are good to a certain extent, but I don't know if they necessarily ring true to the average person who also has real life experience. And sometimes it's nice to be able to just get away and be introduced to another world, and whether it be fantasy or whatever. But when making movies that to me have that kind of depth and importance, that you're telling a real story, or you're telling a true story, in the movies that I've made in the past, those things are important to build loyalty and family. Those are the most important things.
Mark, you mentioned a liquid diet that you were on. Tell us about that and how it affected you.
It's always weird, people talking about losing weight, and there's been so many stories over the years. It's just part of the job. I prepare mentally and physically for everything that I do. And I like having to do both because, you kind of submerge yourself into the character and the world, and you live it until it's over. And that's why one of my most, I always say one of the favorite things about making movies is finishing on that last day, because I get to have my life back and kind of let that go and hopefully feel like I've had a real sense of accomplishment at the end of it. But, that was just what Rupert and those guys and Irwin, they wanted me to look like. So I was like, okay, fine. And I'm not a happy person. I mean, nobody wanted to be around me. I think it's bad if I had too much to drink. Never mind. Not having any food. It's 10 times worse. So but it was just like you have these, take this lemon in the morning with this microbiotic thing. It's like a little thing like that. It looks like milk. That it had this whole thing from this nutritionist and these doctors, and then you'd have 8 ounces of almond milk, one scoop of fiber in the morning, and then 8 ounces of almond milk in the afternoon with this other little scoop of powder, and then 8 ounces of almond milk in the evening with a scoop of powder, and tiny little scoops, and that was it for 6 weeks. And then after the 6 weeks, then you would wean yourself into like as many greens as you wanted once a day. So whether they be steamed or raw, and then you do that for like 2 weeks, and then in the next week you'd have like 8 ounces of protein once a day. So that was it. But by the time I was able to eat, and I swear to God, all I was thinking about was food. I was obsessed. Everywhere we went, I would smell the food. I would sit there with my wife to breakfast. We went away to Montecito, and we were having breakfast after. Well, we went to church, and then went to the pharmacy, and there's a little breakfast place right down the street from San Ysidro Ranch. And so I smelled the bacon. So I go in, then I just sit down. And normally my wife's like, she's mad because I'm always rushing her out of the store. And now I'm just sitting there. I don't want to leave. And she's like, all right, come on, let's go. And I'm like, no, I want to stay for a little while. She's like, what are you doing? I said, I'm smelling the food. She goes, you're just torturing yourself. And I snapped at her because it was like, this is all I have. So, of course, she drove up to the hotel, left me sitting there. But by the time I was able to eat, I had a giant breakfast. I had pancakes, home fries, eggs, English muffin. I wanted to toast well. It came back. It was like light. I was like, dude, I've been waiting a long time for this. Take it back. Normally I would just not eat it. But I felt horrible after I ate the meal. I was sick for it.
Mark, what was your most challenging role to date?
I think it was the most interesting and challenging to date, but just different. Hopefully, I've been really trying to get American Desperado made for quite some time and pushing that uphill, but it's very reminiscent of The Fighter. It's one of those things where it has the potential to be awesome. It just has to be done the right way. So Monahan, we keep getting him to work on the script. We need to find the right filmmaker, but we'll get it done eventually. Mark,
what advantages or disadvantages have you had growing up?
Well, the advantage is that I have so much street smarts that, you can get any college professor that I've worked with in preparing for this movie, and you can't survive 2 minutes where I come from. But the disadvantages are things that I can fix, because I have the books, I have the tools, I have the thesaurus, I have the dictionary. I'm not afraid to ask questions either. I'm not the kind of guy who will sit in a room with somebody who's using a bunch of big words, and then I'll just act like I know what they're talking about, or sit on set with somebody and they'll be trying to explain something and not using layman's terms, and I'll just say, hey, excuse me, what do you mean by that? What does that mean? Explain to me, so I understand. So, but I would just always feel like, I could have done more, or maybe it just takes more work. But, the work is what makes you great, and the work is what makes you prepared. So I don't mind doing that, and if things ever came easy, I don't think I would be in this position,
Mark, what do you think of Aquaman getting made? You going to take credit for that because of Entourage?
I don't really know much about it. It's in the Batman movie, right? I know. I mean, I don't take any credit for it. I think, hopefully it's going to be great. Working on my own thing. I just really knew that the Batman movie was happening, and the whole Ben Affleck thing was like a controversy at first because they were going to shoot in Detroit right after we were there doing Transformers. And I met Zack Snyder a couple times. I like him a lot. And, Amy Adams was in the first one. I don't know if she's in the next one, but I don't know anything about it. I won't know until I see it with the boys. When the boys, we go to Century City and they're sitting there and the trailer comes up and they say, pick it or kick it. If they kick it, we're not going to see it, And now, because you have a tendency to go to the theater and a lot of things look the same. You may see 10 Marvel trailers and a lot of them have a tendency to look the same. So they're getting a little more picky. Before it was like any kind of action, superhero, adventure movie came up, they wanted to see it. Now they're getting a little more.
Any superhero plans for your future?
No, well, we're talking about doing $6 Billion Man, which is very much a superhero, but I don't have to wear any kind of spandex cape. So that was cool. That would be cool. But Howard Gordon is writing the script, and Pete Berg and I are talking about doing it. But we've got a great idea, and it's been something that's been in the pipeline for quite some time. So hopefully, if we get the script right, maybe we'll make it after we do the Deepwater Horizon, the BP.
And what's going on with your BP movie? Can you tell us about the script and how you feel about that so far?
One of the best scripts that I've read in a long time, and obviously it's an amazing story, and you know it's very brave of Lionsgate to make a movie of that size and that scale with that kind of subject matter. But J.C. Shandor is amazing talent, and he's rewriting the script now, and he's just got such a great handle on it, and the stuff that he's doing with the characters is amazing. And now that we've had all this research and really had access to all the transcripts and everything that's happened, I think it's going to be spectacular.
I want to thank you all for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And make sure you go see The Gambler, which opens in theater Christmas Day, December 25th, 2014. Thanks for tuning in to Geek Speak TV. This is Patrick. Have a great day and happy holidays.